about my hair. It's just all over the place, y'all. Shoot. Okay, well, that's fine. Here we go. All right, so this has been a really tough day for a lot of people. The Supreme Court of the United States took action to allow the state of Tennessee to discriminate against transgender youth. And my name is Cassandra Williamson, and I am coming to you from eastern Kentucky, right along the border of West Virginia, where the Tug River separates the two, and near Virginia, which is not too far apart, right there in the corner of those three states, okay? This tri-state area right there. Coal country, or used to be. Now it's just ATV country. There's a little bit of coal stuff going on still. But anyway, so yes, this is the path forward, and that's going to pose a serious challenge for us to figure out exactly what we should be talking about here today, because by now everyone has heard that the Supreme Court of the United States, in a 6-3 ruling, allowed the state of Tennessee to discriminate against transgender youth. Now, they maintain that it didn't need to pass a higher threshold of growing through the, or passing through the, Equal Protection Clause. They said that it didn't apply to that because sex wasn't mentioned and race or gender or anything like that was mentioned. Nothing like that was mentioned in that law from the SB1 law from down in Tennessee. Really, that was the craziest analysis I've ever seen. When in the past, they've always taken a little leap sometimes, and they said, hey, this is going to have an impact on things on a big, broad scale, so we're going to make sure it says this and to it, and this didn't. We've seen it in the past with equal employment when it comes to transgender people, when they ruled in favor of that a few years ago. So we know that they're capable of doing it and actually rationally thinking through something and actually coming up with a balanced and reasonable and competent decision regarding these cases. But instead, the 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court decided to just do a prima facie view of this thing, a review of the law, and the law deliberately and purposefully does not mention sex or gender or any of those other categories at all. They were doing those who prosecuted this case on behalf of the state of Tennessee were doing it that way so that they were hoping the Supreme Court would go just deal with the law as written and not try to see beyond it, see the impact of it down the road. Whereas the plaintiffs on the side who were, trying to stop this law from taking effect, they were able to show that this thing is discriminatory. It is aimed directly at a sexual and gender minority in the country. But the justices decided that, that's not the case. They didn't want to go down that path with that law from Tennessee, SB1. So they have allowed that law to go into effect. Their argument was that it is not discriminatory because it's based on age of the person and the medicine involved in the situation, and that the state had a right to protect those two categories. And to a certain degree, I get that. But however, this was about sex and gender and minority status. But they refused to take that part of the case up. So what did they do when they did that? Well, what they did was they opened the floodgates up for other states, other laws to be passed based on this one as precedent, as long as those laws do not directly mention characteristics that are specific to an individual, such as sexual orientation, gender identity, race, stuff like the immutable characteristics of that individual. Ethnicity, like I said, race, nationality, whatever, national origin, ethnic origin, all those kind of things, including gender and sex and other characteristics that are immutable. But basically, all they have to do is just find a way to say it without actually saying it out loud. And that's what Tennessee did. They took this thing and turned it into that, and they made it so that they got the justices to think along those lines. Now, I know that these justices are smart, well educated, but they're not being motivated by any kind of rational thinking at this point, folks. This is actually ideologically driven. This is not based in any kind of reality. They say that the science was not supportive or whatever. They kind of phrased it in a slightly different way, but they said it's still up for debate. Well, no, this is stuff that's been going on for what since 1920? 20s? Yeah, I mean, this kind of science has been going on a long time, and it has been reputable science backed up by actual data and experts in the field who know what they're talking about. And yeah, it's wise to consider things and review them all the time, to have everything constantly under review. And that's actually scientific. That's what that's all about, right? Sure. But right now, the preponderance of the science is supportive. Not the CAS review and not this kind of crap that came out that's based on the CAS review from the NIH and HHS under Robert Kennedy. No, those things are just garbage, junk science stuff. We know that, they know that, but they don't care because they're building up a case, okay? They're building a case. They're building it on the CAS report, then they build this one on that one. They're going to use this as a means to go after more things. Look, they have a thing about transgender people in this country. But if you think it's just about the kids, well, somewhere along the line, you need to pull your head back up out of that sand pit that you got stuck way down in. They're not stopping with the kids. They're not stopping with the D. They're going for the entire minority population. This kind of backlash that we're seeing, this conservative backlash, that's what I'm going to call it, a conservative backlash to the liberal intensity that we've had over a number of years now. That's nothing new, folks. This has gone on. Well, all right, let me show you a little something I've got here. I'm going to share a screen with you. All right. And, oh, by the way, before I jump into that, this one is for Jesse Waters. If you're watching, Jesse, here. Yeah, that's a nice big straw there, right? I don't know how to explain that one. I'll talk about that later. but anyway, I want to share a screen with you. I want to share this thing that I just asked the AI system to kind of generate an intensity map for me, okay? Starting in the 1920s and going up. And basically it's the intensity of the conservative and liberal intensity in the country over a period of time. And I just want to show you the chart of this thing, how this actually graphs out. Now, this is not, you can't use this for anything other than just it's a conceptualization, okay? You can't gain anything from this other than that. You can see it in a graph. So I'm going to share this screen with you so that you can take a look at this intensity map and kind of see what's going on so that you'll know that there is hope through all of this, okay? There is hope, but it's rough being there. It is rough being in the midst of this one. Here we go. That's not the right one. Hold on a minute. Oh my God, I almost stopped sharing that one. That was not the one I wanted to share. All right, hold on. Let me go over to a window. This one. There we go. All right. So what you're looking at right now is this thing that I created through Gemini Pro, okay? It's not your basic version. I pay a little extra for this one. So I asked it to create a graph for me showing intensities of liberalism in the country and conservatism in the country since the 1920s, after World War I, up through present day, well up into the 2020s, okay? So this is what you're looking at here. Let me see if I can blow it up just a little bit to make it easier to see. And we'll scroll up. It's a conceptual graph. You can't take this to the bank and actually say, okay, look at that. This is what this actually is. This is not, you just can't do that, okay? This graph is a conceptual interpretation of historical periods for conservative backlash against social liberalization and expanded freedoms for minorities and the corresponding liberal intensity. It is not based on quantifiable data, but rather on historical analyses. Okay, the intensity is qualitative. All right, so here you go. The blue is the liberal intensity. In the 1920s, after the First World War, we started seeing liberal intensity growing and growing and growing, and people were starting to push back against war, push back against a lot of different things, push back against prohibition, among other things. And the conservatives were pushing in there too. They were just trying to get along, okay, return to some normalcy, which is what they have always claimed. But you can see that up through the 30s and 40s with the New Deal, I mean, there was some pushback, just a little bit of pushback occurring in the 30s and 40s over the New Deal, because people were saying that it could take away from your personal liberty, and it did not allow the free markets to operate correctly, because the government was subsidizing the repair of the economy after the Depression, okay, or during the Depression. But the conservative backlash and all that had occurred. You had New Deal stuff, then World War II, and from 40 to 45 and all that. And then 1950s, you saw a lot more liberalization taking place and people gaining more rights. And you saw African Americans gaining their right to vote and all kinds of stuff along that lines. And finally, women got the right to vote somewhere back here in this area. But anyway, it's like, come on. And then the new right versus the culture wars and the rights movement started hitting in 60 and 70, between the 60s and 80s. And then you start seeing this underlying and behind all this. You just barely see it, but it was in there. There was a conservative backlash taking place underneath all of that. And then finally, the mid 80s, you start seeing a turnaround into the 90s, where you started getting more of a conservative push and trying to regain some of that territory that they thought they had lost in the intensity of the difference between the two, okay? But what do you notice about this graph? Over time, it's still increasing up. It's increasing up for the liberalization of social norms, okay? But right now, we're in this point where there's just this huge backlash against everything that the liberals are doing. And the liberals are kind of giving in to a lot of stuff like this right now. They're giving into it, and you can see this plainly right there. Periods covered. Okay, so let me go down here. Conservative backlash, reaction against perceived societal shifts, opposition to government expansion, resistance to social and minority freedoms. Liberal intensity, period of significant social reform, expansion of rights, and government action for societal change. Like I just said, okay. 1920s, lower liberal intensity, return to normalcy, moderate conservative backlash. 40s, New Deal, high liberal intensity, strong conservative backlash, opposition to New Deal. 60s, 70s, you can go read right on up through here, okay? And it goes right on through. I'm going to just say, what we're looking at is that these intensities kind of go around each other through time in the U.S., and we're in that place right now where the conservative backlash is stronger intensity-wise than the liberal will to push against it. That means we have to hang on and get through this, because we will get through this, and it will turn the other way. And it will take another 30, 40 years for the conservative backlash to hit again. So what am I saying? Well, I don't know. You just figure that out, okay, for yourself. But can you write it out? That's the question. Can we write out these Supreme Court rulings that roll back protections for trans youth, knowing that the same thing is going to happen to trans adults and LGBT adults in this country over the next few years? And it probably won't take too long, but the country is going to get fed up with all of this pretty darn quickly, okay? The country is going to get pretty darn upset with all of this and want a change from it. So that's what I'm doing by showing you that graph. It's that the social liberalization does occur over a period of time. It takes a lot of time, but it's always stronger than, at the time, the conservative backlash against it. So right now, those roles have been reversed. And some would say that we push too hard on the liberalization of societal norms, but I don't know that that's actually the case. I think it's more along the lines of the conservatives just got fed up with everything that the left is doing in terms of, you know, transgender people and trans women in sports. And we kind of did it to ourselves too, by the way, when we put transgender women, allowed that to occur. We should have controlled that a little bit better, but no, we have this tendency to rush headlong into it and keep pushing. There is light at the end of the tunnel, though. It will change and flip around. It will change and flip around in the next few years. It won't be easy to get there. We're going to have a lot of heartache, a lot of pain and travail to get there because of what's going on at all levels of the federal government. Now, this is an ideological thing for them. It's more than just conservatism. As a matter of fact, it's Trumpism. It's not really, this is an anomaly in American history. It's much like Andrew Jackson was an anomaly in American history. So these are anomalies, but once we get through it, we'll be able to restore a lot of the things and gain even more than what we have now or what we had before we lost everything with this bunch that's in power now. So be of strong mind and character, and do not fear, as I know you know exactly what those mean and where they come from, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. We do know, we still have to continue fighting on a daily basis. You can't just roll over and let this stuff go through. You probably could. Probably wouldn't change anything, actually. Let me see. Yeah, you probably could just sit there and just let it happen. But if you don't stand up for something, you will fall because of everything else. So I encourage you to be strong in your faith in the future of where this is all headed. The liberalization of societal norms does happen, and it is happening. It has been happening forever. That's just the way it is. So hang in there. Be strong with it. And I know I was going to talk about something else. What was it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me pull up this image right here, folks. There you go. How many of you know what that is? How many of you know what that image represents? Have you been in that auditorium before? Probably wise not to say that you have at this point. Some of you will recognize this auditorium. Well, that is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth standing up there on the stage. And those are all military officers, civilian leaders and stuff, and enlisted personnel in the Pentagon. This is an auditorium in the Pentagon. And this is a monthly prayer service. You heard that right. This is a monthly Christian nationalist prayer service. And I use those words deliberately. Pete Hegseth is a Christian nationalist. What does that mean? Well, it means that he believes he has the right to rule over this country in any way that he desires, as long as it follows what he perceives as being biblical. That's his church. Last time he had his pastor in from his Tennessee church, also a Christian nationalist. And so these people are trying to take over this country ideologically from a religious perspective and instill upon it their view of how this nation was formed, which is wrong. And wrong on the facts and wrong on the direction. Wrong in every way. So what you're looking at is an attempt to take over this. Now, I'm wondering, and some of you who may have been in the Pentagon there can tell me this, do they give equal time to the Muslims who work in the building? I bet you they don't. They would be lucky to have a corner place to call their own. Because Christian nationalists believe that their religion is superior to everyone else's. All others are inferior to theirs. And if you don't convert to theirs, then, well, you know, there's always the door. So let me see what we have in chat here. Somebody's kind of helped me out a little bit. Let's see. There's only 5 or 6 transgender people in the NCAA. If you listen to right-wing pundits, they'd say it was 100. Yes, you're right. You're right, exactly. But all it takes is those 5 or 6, Virginia, and then it becomes a national epidemic over on the right side, just as you said there. They will always do that. They will always go to one individual case and make it into a mountain and turn it into something it's not. Every time. That's why I say that it's on us to kind of control and regulate that a little bit better, because we don't need to be the ones out there saying or giving them ammunition to feed to their side of things that keeps that on the graph. Remember the graph I showed you a minute ago? Keeps that conservative backlash going. So yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing. They're keeping this conservative backlash, the intensity of it going. All they have to have is 1 or 2 different cases around the country, and they can instill that kind of conservative intensity to keep this moving in their direction. That's why, let me bring back up a second, okay? Go back here. I'm going to share this screen one more time. Go to the window, go here, and share. Okay, so this is it. Conservative versus liberal intensity in U.S. history. History starting in 1920. Okay, for the most part, liberal intensity has always been really strong, and the conservatives have figured out now since about 1985, 1986, somewhere in that period of time when Reagan was in office with the moral majority and all of that, they have figured out how to manipulate their stories such that any single thing that they want to use can be amplified across all their platforms. Because it turned it into a mountain when actually it's a molehill, if that, barely a dimple in the sand. But yet, as long as we keep feeding that conservative backlash will stay there. We've got to stop feeding that backlash. And then we can get back, we can regain the control of this, okay? Because this cycle is mostly liberal. Over time, I mean, the vast majority of the intensity that you see over time from 1920 all the way up to 2020, most of that intensity and most of the gains have been on the liberal side. Societal norms have moved in a liberal direction since the 1920s. And like I said, the only thing that's turned this around was in the Reagan period with the moral majority, and they started going after individual issues on the impact of individuals and showing them as being part of the bigger problem, and they could identify a person. They put a name to that person and said, this is who we are going after. These are the people we don't want around. And that's what they're doing. That's what this means right here. This whole little thing right there. I don't know if you can see my cursor moving around. It's barely there. Okay. But anyway, this area here where they've got the conservative backlash is pushing back against the liberal backlash or liberal intensity. Well, that's what's going on. They figured out a way to frame their narrative on a broad scale across multiple platforms, and also Fox News. The other thing that occurred in here, not just moral majority, but Fox News. Fox News came out and they just started pounding and pounding on one single issue at a time, one person at a time, that they could put a face to it. If they could put a face to what it was they were opposed to, then they could keep that news cycle going in their favor. And it didn't matter if you watched or not. It built the intensity, and what the intensity did, it spread like wildfire in the conservative communities. And then before long, it started burning down the blue communities. All right. So that's what we're looking at. So we have contributed to this flip in intensity, and we've got to figure out how to stop it. Let's see what other comments we have in here. Okay. Not to mention the right wingers often or on most of the legacy media. Yeah, that's that's the funny part, isn't it? They always say the legacy media. You're right. You're right, Junie. They always say it's the liberal media over there, the legacy media type. But you know, the people who own those, well, you know, we don't we don't want to focus too much on that, do we? See, our problem is we can't find a conservative face to put on some of these things and some of these issues that we believe in and show how wrong these people are and how vile it is for them to attack rights of other human beings. We need a face to focus it on, and something that says, oh, this is what that means. So in Tennessee, with the SCOTUS ruling, we need to be amplifying the voices of our people in these communities so that we can gain control of the narrative again. We've done it in the past, but we've lost that now. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on and on. I am fighting my own cold. So I'm just going to rapidly flip through a couple of little things here. This is Trump setting fire to Pride Month, trying his best to do that. And happy Pride Month to everybody who might be watching from wherever, however you are. I'm very proud to be an American. I'm proud to be a veteran. I'm proud to have served my country. I am proud that I'm a parent of 4 and a grandparent of 8. And I'm proud of the fact that, you know, I have a few differences than everybody else. But that doesn't make me any less human than all of you. Okay? Let me see who else. Oh, and I got to pull this last one. That's Stephen Miller when I made him look like Goebbels. Goebbels from Adolf Hitler's regime. That's Stephen Miller looks like Goebbels to me. I don't know about you. He looks just like a copy, a genetic copy of Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist. Yeah, that's what I think of Stephen Miller. Anyway. Have a great evening, everyone. Try to keep a smile on your face and make sure that you're out here living your life authentically, being friends with people you don't like. Go out and meet people. Get out of the house. Go see the community in which you live and let people know that you're not going anywhere. And you'll find, this is what you'll discover, for the most part, you will find that people genuinely don't hate you. They don't understand you, but they don't hate you either. And the way around it, the way to get through to them is on a personal level. Personal note, get to know them, talk to them, go to the DAV meetings or the VFW meetings, go to your whatever meetings you want to go to, or get out in the community and do DoorDash like I do. I go up every holler around through here. I've met a lot of people and they all look at me kind of weird and I'll go, it's just a Marine Corps trick, don't worry about it. And they laugh and I laugh. So, have fun out there, be safe, keep your head on the swivel. Yes, there are stupid people around, but know this does turn around. The wind is in our favor. Have a great evening, everyone.